Labour and the Conservatives are in freefall. The local elections were an absolute example of that. Labour lost 198 out of the 296 seats that they were defending, so pretty much two-thirds of them. Here's Wes Streeting trying to justify it.
People voted for change at the last general election, and at the moment people aren't feeling that change, and I think that's reflected in the results on Thursday. These are moves in the right direction. Will people be feeling the benefits of that yet? No. So that's why the Prime Minister said he wants to go further and faster on delivering real improvements that people feel. Because if they don't feel it by the next general election, they will look for change elsewhere.
Frankly, we'd like them to slow down. And even their own MPs are fed up. Dan Carden pointed this out.
Enough of low wages and sky-high bills. Enough of high streets being left to rot. Enough of crumbling infrastructure and public services that don't work. Enough of broken promises. Do you know who said that? It was your Labour colleague, the Labour MP Dan Carden.
The Conservatives did even worse and were pretty much obliterated. You can see why both parties colluded and postponed local and mayoral elections. The writing was on the wall. They are running scared of Reform UK. Yet despite this brazen behaviour, both parties appear to be tone deaf to the cries of the British public. So listen very carefully, both of you, and I believe I speak for a large portion of the British public. We do not believe that smashing the gangs is a legitimate policy, and it is nigh on impossible anyway. From a government who won't even have a national inquiry into smashing rape gangs in this country, whose network possibly span at least 50 locations, we are not confident that the Labour Party is capable of smashing gangs internationally. And as for the Conservatives, well, they aren't capable of anything. We are sick and tired of paying out willy-nilly to house and feed channel migrants who are making a mockery of the kindness and generosity of the British people, who themselves are suffering. Instead of this country being so inviting, give them tents, like in France, which is where they are fleeing from, to get better conditions here.
I say no to putting people in hotels. Tents are good enough for France, they should be good enough for here in Britain.
And for God's sake, ditch net zero. We are frankly not impressed right now in banging the drum for net zero, especially as it is costing us a fortune and leaving us beholding to China for raw materials and raw earths. How does this give us any energy security, and how does it reduce carbon globally when it is simply being offset elsewhere? Then, when you add transportation costs, you're actually putting out more. And in order to keep this so-called renewable nonsense all going, it needs to be subsidised. Renewable energy is costing us $25.8 billion a year across households and industries. Ed's mad schemes include a £22 billion experimental carbon capture scheme announced the same day as a £22 billion black hole, which, if Labour had the money, why didn't they just fill it with that? Carbon capture has pretty much failed everywhere that it has been tried. Then there was carpeting the land with wind farms and solar panels, where we had to admit that the hard materials for the latter were coming from China, who used slave labour. Had he not been challenged, he would still buy them from plants there who use that sort of labour. Anyway, we can see how flimsy solar panels are in bad weather conditions on the farms in Anglesey after they were destroyed. He even talked about dimming the sun. But how do you square that circle when you're advocating solar energy? We could still lose our last blast furnaces, and there will, under his guidance, we've done away with coal, and there'll be no new oil and gas licences, so we'll be buying from elsewhere. And of course, we had that energy phenomena that happened in Europe due to the unpredictability of renewables, the fluctuations interfering with the grid in Portugal and Spain, which led to blackouts. To his opponents, he has sworn he will fight on, sacking 80-year-old Dame Mary Archer, the wife of author Geoffrey Archer, who was on the board of Ed's Net Zero department. 7 months previously, Labour had blocked her from taking up a post as the chairman of the London Parks, and more recently, she agreed with Tony Blair that Net Zero was doomed to fail. Time to ditch net zero. Enough is enough. If the two main parties refuse to listen to the electorate, then they will be obliterated at the ballot box.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Have you been getting a load of spam in your email recently? What about random calls? It's really annoying, isn't it? Data brokers are out there collecting your personal information. Anything from your email, your full name, your address, and even your political affiliation. Cyber criminals can even use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick people into sending them money. And it gets even worse. People out there are getting huge loans taken out in their names without even knowing about it. But don't worry, because the sponsor of this video, Incogni, can help. They reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information is removed from their databases. Incogni continues to make sure that your data is removed automatically from the internet via repeated removal requests. So, how can you get started? Well, step 1, hit the link in the description, create an Incogni account and tell us whose data you'd like removed. Step 2, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf. Step 3, sit back, relax and watch Incogni work. They will update consistently so you know when your data has been removed. Incogni is risk-free for 30 days, so you can try it for yourself and you'll get a free refund if the service isn't for you. So take back your personal data today with Incogni. Use the code GBNews using the link in the description below and you'll get 60% off an annual payment plan.
Right now, I'm joined by the leader of the Climate Party and independent councillor, Ed Gemmell. Ed Gemmell, welcome. Now, do you honestly support Ed Miliband and his net zero exploits?
Well, I don't think he knows what he's doing, but
Okay.
but I do support net zero as a fabulous stimulus to actually put more money into our economy and grow our economy.
In what way? Sorry, because we're spending 25.8 billion to subsidise these renewables. So how is it putting money in?
I mean, putting money in. It's not putting money in as well as it should be at the moment.
So it's not, is it?
Because we're simply not doing it very well. You know, I mean, what we should be doing is looking ahead, looking at what's coming down the track, and projections at the moment from McKinsey's and others is there's going to be up to 12 trillion in net zero trade coming up in 2030. So that's global trade, $12 trillion US dollars.
But you say this, but give us an example of one of the things that it will be coming from. Will it be 12 trillion in the pockets of China as they make more and more solar panels and raw earths?
Okay, well, so I'll come straight onto that, but just, I mean, in general, they looked at 11 different sectors, so it's coming right across the board in everything. It's not simply talking about renewables, it's a lot of sectors, including agriculture, building, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of China, the whole point at the moment is China is ahead of everybody in making the money. I mean, they're building those coal-fired power stations, which I mentioned here before, but they're making all the money. So those coal-fired power stations are out there making the solar panels and the wind turbines and the batteries and everything else that we're then importing to ourselves here.
Can you see the problem with that?
Yeah, no, deindustrialisation. I can see the massive problem with that. But deindustrialisation is not being caused by net zero. I mean, let's be very, very clear about it.
In what way is it not being caused by net zero? Because what you just said there, so we're offsetting our carbon, so we're getting rid of all our coal fields and everything else like that. We're allowing China to do it, so we were deindustrialising ourselves, and then we are now enabling China, and then we are transporting these things to this country so that we can say that we're zero carbon.
Okay, I think if I could just simply look at the dates and the stats right at the beginning and then answer it fully. So 2008 is when the Climate Change Act came in. Okay, that's when it came in. That's effectively when we started to decarbonise and we put it into law. And we didn't talk about net zero until 2019. But let's just take the 15 years since 2008. Our manufacturing as a percentage of GDP in 2008 was 9.5%. Okay, it's now 9.1. Sorry, in 2023, it was 9.1%. So it's gone down by 0.4% since we've had net zero as a concept.
So it hasn't grown. Net zero
definitely hasn't grown.
At all.
So, but let's go back 15 years before. Right. In the 15 years before, it actually went down from 1993 by 11%. Now let's go back another 20 years, and it went down from 1973 to 1993 by another 11%.
But there's a lot of going back, and
what it means is net zero is not causing it. Now that doesn't say we can't do it better.
It doesn't mean that, does it? Because there may be other factors that are causing this sort of thing. So net zero is not the only thing that goes on in terms
Certainly not the only thing. Absolutely.
So I'm not going to take much with those figures because I just feel that there are so many other elements and factors that could cause our productivity to go up or down.
And I think what we do, and I would agree with you over that period. The point being there's lots of factors. It's not only net zero, and even in the recent terms, we haven't got down that much over the period we've been talking about it. Now, in terms of potential to grow GDP in the future, what are the big trends around the world? There are two massive trends happening around the world. We may disagree with details of them, but they're AI and the sustainability and net zero. And these are projections of McKinsey and other consultants about where everybody's going to put their money, put their buck over the next 5, 10, 20 years. Now, AI is seen to be bigger, but net zero is also seen to be huge, as we said, 12 trillion. Now, if we went ahead and did it better, harder, faster, invested instead of piffering around the edge and all that sort of thing. If we actually got there and did it, made it our industrial plan to lead in the clean industrial revolution.
In what world can we lead with net zero if solar panels, which are all made in China, we don't have the coal required to create them? Right. In what world can we lead in those technologies? Because we don't have the facilities to produce them. Right. And even if we did produce them, we'd have to get those things from somewhere else. And then that would then break net zero because we'd have to open coal and gas and all the other things.
We've got to change. So a few different things in there, both in terms of the detail and the general. So in the general sense, we've got to change our attitude to buy it cheap tomorrow. That's what we've been doing for decades. Buy it cheap tomorrow is why we import all this stuff from China. And whether that's consumers buy it cheap tomorrow, government buy it cheap tomorrow, too much buy it cheap tomorrow. Think now, slightly longer term, which politicians aren't very good at, I grant you. Think 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, not just tomorrow, votes tomorrow, poll tomorrow, etc. Now, if we actually think like that, then we have to have a proper strategy to do it. So in order to move ahead, what we do is we do all the big stuff and we start innovating. In World War II, when we had to innovate quickly, and very pertinent considering what's happening tomorrow, in World War II, there were Liberty ships that we were building before the war, and I think it's about 140, 150 days. In the middle of the war...
We were using coal and gas.
Oh, no, sure. But it's more about the innovation cycle and the opportunity. If you think big, go for it and have a proper plan. In the middle of the war, one of those ships was built in 4.5 days, and the average was about 40. So we accelerated that innovation cycle by 5 to 50 times. Now, think of what we're doing at the moment, whether it's in energy, agriculture, construction, whatever it is, and all the innovations we're doing, particularly in energy, think tidal power as an opportunity. And think if we really concentrated on it, we had the right legislation in place and we had the right investment, how fast could we move those innovation cycles? Yeah. And if we did, some of the things we're talking about would be solved.
I hear you, but this is a pipe dream. I'm sorry. But there are too many things that you're requiring. You're requiring the government to think long term. It's never happened. It never would happen.
Yes,
They're short-termists. They think about their job and they don't really care about that. So that's not going to happen. So already there's no more to talk about. They're not going to be long-termists. And secondly, half the stuff you're talking about, innovation, which are words which mean anything or nothing. A lot of these innovations need coal, gas, and all the things that we are using in other countries so that we can produce the things here and then say that we have zero carbon. So frankly, and also, Ed, we might be wrong. Carbon might not be the enemy.
Probably don't go there.
I've got about 1 minute, so go on.
Right, so I think what it needs politicians with guts. Politicians have got to have the balls and they've got to actually go for it and they've got to see, big mission, take the country with them and do it. And the alternative, what is it? The Office of Budget Responsibility is suggesting our national debt is going to be 3 to 6 times higher in the next 50 years. That is devaluation of the pound, restructuring of the economy and everything else. So the alternative is, to the big mission is what?
Well,
no one's giving me an alternative.
The OBR are often wrong, to be honest with you. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them.
Our debt has been going up for decades, the trend is correct.
And frankly, net zero is costing us a fortune and we are all somewhat poorer as a result of it. And remember...
Because we're not doing it properly.
No, that's not true, Ed. It's because we're buying things from China. They are raping the earth of all their raw materials, minerals and everything else like that.
We should do it here.
People in Niger and all those places mining for all those things and
reindustrialise Britain.
Reindustrialise it, yes.
Put the clean tech in here, the clean technologies, do it here, earlier, harder.
We'll need
green
coal
steel,
and
green
gas.
Cement,
green
produce
steel,
tidal power.
You should surely know is not as strong. We don't have the technology to create that yet.
It's being created in Sweden. They've got a company there which has taken 1.5 billion of equity and it's now just raised 4 billion of debt. It's going to produce the same amount of steel as Port Talbot was producing, green virgin steel, 95% decarbonised. They're doubling the capacity by 2030. Same kind of cost as us putting in an electric arc furnace. We are behind the times. We don't have the courage. We're not thinking of the future.
I think we are, and a lot of us can just about afford the future and that 25.8 billion in subsidies for net zero.